I would just like to take this moment to acknowledge that Laurentian University, the space in which we occupy today, is located in the traditional unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Atikamekw and Anishinaabe and the Wambatay First Nations. We are also situated within the boundaries of the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850. As we proceed today, I urge you to remember the land on which we are on, the people who came before us, and I urge you to lead in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. Thank you.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Laurentian University's Federal Debate. My name is Darius Garneau, and I'm going to be your English moderator today. This debate will consist of 8 segments: opening and closing statements, 5 questions on the issues that are most pressing to students at Laurentian, in Sudbury, and Canada as a whole. And we will also have a segment for open debate if time permits. Candidates, all of your statements and responses today will be a duration of 2 minutes, and we will signal you when you are at 20 seconds remaining. When we move to the question period, each candidate will have the opportunity to respond to a candidate they're choosing, and these responses will be 1 minute in duration. And the speaking order for these responses will be determined by whoever signals me first, so please go ahead and give me a wave when in the order that you guys want to go. So, hi.
Bonjour à tous et bienvenue au débat fédéral de l'Université Laurentienne. Je m'appelle Inès BAGAOUI et je serai votre animatrice francophone aujourd'hui. Le débat sera composé de 8 sections, les déclarations d'ouverture et de clôture, 5 questions sur des enjeux importants pour les étudiants de la Laurentienne, de Sudbury et du Canada, ainsi qu'un segment pour un débat ouvert si le temps le permet. Toutes vos déclarations et vos réponses auront une limite de 2 minutes et nous allons vous indiquer lorsqu'il restera 20 secondes. Pendant la période de questions, chaque candidat aura 1 minute pour répondre à un autre candidat. Les premiers à parler seront ceux qui nous font signe en premier, donc faites juste un signe. Merci. Nous allons commencer avec les déclarations d'ouverture. L'ordre a été choisi au hasard en commençant par Paul Lefebvre.
With that, we will now move to opening statements, chosen by random order as all the questions are. Paul Lefebvre will start us off.
Donc, bienvenue tout le monde. Merci beaucoup d'être ici. Un honneur d'être revenu encore à la Laurentienne. On dit que j'étais souvent ici dans les derniers 4 ans. So my name is Paul Lefebvre, so I'm the incumbent member of Parliament, the Liberal candidate for the upcoming election. So people asked me back in 2015, certainly, why did you run? And why am I running again? And certainly back in 2015, and I like to share this story because it highlights one of the reasons why I ran, was on the basis of fairness. So I was very fortunate. My dad's a welder. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and he became a social worker by doing night classes for 12 years, and actually has a Laurentian degree. And for me, certainly I've been very fortunate. I was able to work hard and get to law school and become a lawyer. Same thing with my wife. Her dad's an electrician, stay-at-home mom, worked hard, became a doctor. Now, for us, there was the Canada Child Benefit, and we had 3 children. And we were getting the same thing that my brother-in-law, who was on disability, received. Exact same thing. So he had 3 children and receiving a small little pension because he was disabled. And so I found that was patently unfair. Why should people that are doing well have the same thing that somebody that is struggling to get by? So the first thing that we did was actually make sure that the people that do not require the Canada Child Benefit do not get it, and people that obviously are not receiving it or receiving the same thing get more and get it tax-free. So on that basis, that was one of the reasons why I ran back in 2015. Maintenant, 2019, un peu de la même raison, il faut s'assurer que tout le monde a la même chance à avoir du succès. For me, everybody have an equal chance at success, no matter where you're from, who you are, your religion, your gender, you know what? For me, at the end of the day, we need to make sure that as a society and in Canada, we make sure that everybody has that chance of success. I believe that the policies we had in the last 4 years are driving us in that direction. We need to keep moving forward and move forward in that direction. Merci.
Thank you, Paul. CHANELLE LALONDE.
Hello, bonjour, Annie. My name is CHANELLE LALONDE, and I am representing the Animal Protection Party of Canada. I am a driven animal rights activist, vegan, as well as an optimistic environmentalist. For 3 years, I studied environmental studies at Laurentian University, which opened my eyes to the urgency of preserving our planet. I was one of the main organizers of the Last Straw movement in Sudbury, urging restaurant owners to ditch plastic straws and other single-use plastics within their business. I've also participated at various festivals educating the public on the importance of reducing our carbon footprint and how to live a zero-waste lifestyle. I'm hoping to bring urgency on the importance of animal rights for the earth, for animals, for us, as we are all connected. I believe that all living organisms deserve the right to keep on existing and that humans are not superior to nature. We are nature. Scientific research shows that harming and killing animals is the leading cause of premature human death, environmental destruction, climate change, and human conflict. The more we reduce the harm and killing we cause animals at all levels, individual, societal, and global, the greater the benefits to people, society, the environment, and of course, the animals themselves. The APPC's main focus is to create a government that will protect animals, empower people, and preserve the environment. The fate of the global ecosystem and all living things is largely decided by our elected politicians. They will not make the right choices to protect the environment and save the animals unless they are held accountable for their decisions when it matters most to them on election day. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
Thank you, Chanel. We'll now move on to Sean Patterson.
Good morning, everybody. I'm your PPC candidate. I'm a hardworking person that's worked multiple jobs over the years, mostly around the mining industry. Spending my summers collecting minerals all over Canada and the US, this was an excellent learning experience for me, being around some of the top geologists, mineralogists in my younger years. I'm a drilling and blasting and mining technician by trade. I believe in a good education. I've investigated forms of all different natural alternative energies, wind, solar, wave, energy recovery systems, geothermal, and nuclear. I want to see some of these energy systems championed here in Canada. When I look at a policy, I look at it in regards to the health and security of a nation. All nations should strive to grow, mine, produce as many products as possible, creating jobs and thriving local economies. Natural resources are the only true wealth of a nation. Some people say it's people. Natural resources can't be moved. Industry and people can. That's why I say it's the true wealth of a nation. These provide good jobs and has been the foundation of this country and what it was built on. We must protect, utilize these resources safely, efficiently to allow Canadians to move forward into a better future. All Canadian people are Canadians. Divisional politics need to go. We all have the rights and freedoms our Constitution affords us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. We'll now move on to Beth Mairs.
Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Beth Mairs, and I'm running for the New Democrats here in Sudbury, and a huge thank you to the organizers. I'm very, very honored to have the opportunity to present the NDP platform to you today, especially on priority issues of the environment, reconciliation, youth issues, housing, jobs, and immigration. I feel quite differently than my colleague here, Paul Lefebvre, because I see that the disparities that we have in people's income, which are unprecedented, crushing student debt, and years and years of not following up on our obligations to clean up the planet and meet targets are directly the results of policies of the Liberal and Conservative government. I want you to know that I once was a student. I went to Waterloo and then to Carleton, and I taught post-secondary at George Brown, and I also taught here at Laurentian for 6 years in the School of Human Kinetics Outdoor Adventure Leadership Program. Now, that doesn't mean that I have any idea of what your issues and concerns are. But I'm really looking forward to this conversation this morning, and I hope to be able to share some of the New Democrat or NDP platform for you so that you can come out this morning with an accurate take on what we represent, and then for you to determine what fits with your values, your priorities, and your needs as you live as a student and as you envision your future. I have never run for politics before, but I decided to step up because I feel the issues facing this coming Parliament in general are so crucial. It's that we have to look beyond mainstream politicians, because you see, I've been a community activist for decades. And as such, and being an old dame, I believe I can act to benefit our planet, to improve the lives of the average Canadian and those suffering.
Ms. Maris, thank you.
Okay.
We'll now move on to Pierre Saint-Amand.
Hello, bonjour, Ani. My name is Pierre Saint-Amand. I'm ex-military. I retired 3 years ago after serving a grand total of 41 years between the reserves and the regular army. So this is my first foray into politics as well. So it's kind of an exciting experience, and I really appreciate it. And I want to thank the organizers here, because it's actually always a great experience to talk to people directly without sort of the filtering that happens sometimes in the press. And it's an opportunity to an extent to dispel some of the myths about the Conservative Party. And one is, of course, we're very supportive of gay rights. Me personally, I know, and I've worked with, and I have people in my family who are gay. So it's something that we are very supportive of, and our sort of view of that as a society has evolved over the last 20 years or so, and so it's really now it's a non-issue for us as well. We're very supportive of gay rights. I'd like to also talk about the environment. We are not climate change deniers, but what we do believe is we can put forward a more practical solution towards climate change. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to speak about that specifically. And j'aimerais également mentionner en français que j'apprécie beaucoup le fait français ici à l'Université Laurentienne, et j'ai rencontré votre directeur, votre président de l'université, et on a parlé beaucoup du fait français, et moi j'aimerais voir encore plus d'opportunités pour les francophones ici à l'université. So I think this is a great opportunity, and I'm really happy to be speaking to you guys. It's a great university. There's a lot of construction that's going on. There's a lot of it's moving forward. My fiance, unfortunately, my wife passed away 5 years ago. But my fiance is a teacher here, a full professor here at Laurentian. So she's working now. Unfortunately, I can't see her in the audience. So have a great day.
Bill Crumplin.
That's great. All right, I think we're set to go. Welcome, bonjour, and it is fabulous to be home. I have not been on campus often, as I'm on sabbatical this year. It's great to be in this space. I love this space. It's good to see familiar faces. And, you know, there are so many different measures of success. And I have one really big measure sitting at this table with me at the other end. CHANELLE was a student of mine. I am so proud of her stepping up and running on things that she believes in. That is, you know, there's really nothing better than that for a professor. Because one of the things that I try to do is I try to instill in my students, and many of them are here today, that it's important to get out there, make a stand, make a difference, try to carry your message. And I feel that is critical. And I'm, you know, I've been at Laurentian for 17 years now. I love this place. I love being with students. I'm going to miss being in the classroom. I really am. That is so energizing and rewarding. But, you know, a little bit that maybe you don't know about me. I happen to be first-generation Canadian on my mother's side, second on my father's. My mother grew up in southern Ontario on a farm. She came over at 6 years of age in 1936 from Slovakia because of what was taking place in Europe at the time. I know that immigration is important. I wouldn't be here if Canada didn't have an open arms policy. And I'm here and I can show, I'm sort of living proof that this country is open, and if you work hard, you can actually succeed. And it's great to see you all, and I look forward to further discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crumplin. So with that, we'll all now move on to question 1.
La première question. Au Canada, 73% des systèmes d'eau des territoires autochtones sont jugés comme ayant un niveau de risque de moyen à élevé. Plus de 100 communautés ont des avis d'eau non potable. C'est inacceptable. Notre question est la suivante. Dans un monde où l'eau potable est un droit fondamental, quelle démarche allez-vous prendre pour vous assurer que chaque individu au Canada ait accès à l'eau potable?
In Canada, 73% of First Nations water systems are at a medium to high risk of contamination. Over 100 communities are on boil water advisories. This is unacceptable. My question to you candidates is, in a world where clean water is a basic human right, what steps will be taken or are being taken to make sure every individual in Canada has access to clean drinking water? Sean Patterson will begin.
Yes, this is a key thing with the People's Party of Canada. We have written out a full Indigenous policy. We'd like to get rid of the Indian Act, but when it comes to our environmental policy, we are focusing on pollution. And clean water is one of the biggest issues that we need to address and needs to be addressed on our First Nations reserves. And coming from the mining industry, I've seen very well-built, fast to install water treatment plants. And there's no reason why we don't have fresh water on these reserves. It is a failure amongst not just our the reserves themselves, but upon our government, because we help them to self-govern, which we would actually like to back off of that and let them self-govern more. But up until this point in time, it has been the responsibility of our government to step forward and make sure issues like this are taken care of, and they have not. And this is going to be one of the main priorities when it comes to our First Nations in Canada, for the People's Party of Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Bill Crumplin.
Thank you. Oh, there goes the pen. I'll get it later. The Green Party fully embraces all 46 articles of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. A green government will remove all obstacles within the judicial, legislative, and educative branches of government to wholly implement UNDRIP principles. We will work to make Indigenous nations equal partners in setting national policy priorities. We'll develop a national strategy for housing, clean water, food security, and health care. Greens endorse the comprehensive agenda prepared by the Assembly of First Nations for this particular election, and those cover a range of policy areas that address the inequities and mistreatment experienced by First Nations across Canada. These include measures relating to reconciliation, health, education, housing, climate change, environmental protection, justice, rights, economic development, infrastructure, and skills training. And one thing that came out in an earlier debate, and I feel it's worthwhile mentioning now, is it's critical for us to be careful of the words we use when we're talking about these things. I don't like hearing words like them, these people. It's us, we, each other. And I really feel that is an important first step in acknowledging the fact that we have to work together to solve these complex problems that our nation actually is facing. Thank you very much.
Pierre Saint-Amand.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup pour la question. It's pretty astounding in a country like Canada that we have some of our people living in third world situations. I had the opportunities to serve in Africa on a United Nations mission, and it's kind of astounding when you think that here in Canada, some of our fellow citizens are living like that. The second point of our environmental policy, we talk a lot about carbon tax, but and that's the first point and the third point of our environmental policy. But the second point is to clean up our other systems, our lakes, our water, to reduce pollution as well, which is equally as important to the health of Canadians. So what we are planning on doing on that second point is investing heavily in cleaning up the reserves, but what we do want is an accountable system, and we want to be able to have some measurable results. So we are very much committed to reducing that, because 73% of native land where they do not have clean water is a pretty astounding and frankly a very embarrassing situation for Canadians. It's absolutely unconscionable. So we want to start by cleaning up water for Canadians. It's a fundamental right, and we are going to focus on that, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Beth Mairs.
So the fact that we still have so many communities under a water advisory is symptomatic of a larger problem, and that's the racism and systemic racism and colonialism that is part of the Canadian, a sad part of our history, and one that many people from a settler background, such as myself, have had that shroud ripped aside. We now see in plain view that it's harder and harder to feel truly proud to be a Canadian when we allow people, First Nations, to live in such deplorable conditions as second-class citizens, and we, in fact, with just a range of inequities from the get-go. So in talking about water, I think in a way cleaning up the water will be one of the easiest fixes. It hasn't been done because it hasn't been seen as a priority. Our current government has made different choices, for example, to take $4.5 billion and buy a pipeline, which had there was no referendum about this. It wasn't an election issue. I guess that was more important than cleaning up First Nations water, because if it was a priority, it would have been done. If there were these sorts of issues in a major city across Canada, it would be considered unacceptable, and it would be a #1 priority because of human health. But unfortunately, we have been conditioned to see First Nations people as less than, as not worthy, and somehow up there. So the NDP has many platforms in terms to address and to redress right relations with First Nations, like supporting UNDRIP, like moving towards sovereignty. And am I going to be cut off?
Guy Beth Mairs.
Okay.
Paul Lefebvre.
Merci pour la question qui est très importante et très de l'actualité encore de nos jours, malheureusement. So when we came to power in 2015, there was over 135 long-term boil water advisories. Over 80 have been lifted. The way to do it, and again, sometimes the perception is just walk in and get it done. We need to work with First Nation communities hand in hand to make sure that this no longer happens after the fact. So what we need to do at the same time, and that's what we've embarked on ensuring, is that the training by First Nation communities in First Nation communities to make sure that they're able to maintain their water systems. So we've not only addressed the problem, and we endeavored that by 2021, all long-term well water advisories will be lifted. We're actually ahead of the curve. This will be done by 2021 or even before. There's around 50 left. They're all in the process of being lifted, in the sense of we're working with communities to address this. And I'll give you actually a real example, just on Manitoulin Island. So I was invited by Chief Shining Turtle to the Whitefish Reserve, and he told me, listen, Paul, we have this, a water system that was built 15 years ago, and it's not even at capacity, and he's an engineer, so he told me it was wrongly built back then, and I've been asking INAC, Indigenous Services, to address this. So what I did, after meeting with him, certainly we continued the communication went to the department, advocated and make sure. And last year, I was invited to go and open the new water system in that community. And they have people that are training and that they know how to maintain it. I saw it with my own eyes. Same thing with Wiki. With Wimikong for First Nation, I was there and I saw the professionals that they have trained there to make sure and maintain. Again, it's not perfect, but we're on the path and on the direction to address this. Talking about UNDRIP, unfortunately, it was stuck in the Senate, so we was accepted in Parliament. We voted on it. At the Senate, it didn't pass. The first thing that we will do when we're reelected to make sure that UNDRIP is back and make sure that it passes.
Thank you, Paul. CHANELLE LALONDE.
Thank you. For a country with as much wealth and privileges as we have, Indigenous people suffer the effect of stigma, racism, criminalization, poverty, and inadequate recognition of their rights and territorial claims. It is time for this era in our history to end. This is why we believe that we must look beyond isolating specific tasks set out by colonizing bodies and instead engage in Indigenous-led conciliation. APPC will work to implement the legal rights of Indigenous people for self-determination. These rights are recognized in these documents, but have been ignored by governments in Canada. A fundamental aspect of this would be an Indigenous-led decision as to what to do with the Indian Act and how to deal with the recommendation from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. Calls to action on how to reimagine a Canada without such discriminatory legislation. This will lead to an assertion of Indigenous peoples' inherent rights of self-governance as each nation defines it. As privileged partners in this transition, we will provide the funding and legislative changes necessary to support Indigenous communities to uphold their self-determination. We recognize that these funding provided is simply returning resources to communities that were originally taken from them, such as clean water. This new partnership will not be easily achieved within the context of a long-standing, ongoing, and traumatic colonial framework. However, at the core of our commitment to compassionate politics is a commitment to overcoming fear of change with action. Thank you.
Thank you, CHANELLE. So we'll now move to responses. Who would like to go first? Candidates? Oh, yes, we're moving on to responses now. So, yes, so 1 minute in duration. You guys will be able to choose which candidate you wish to respond to. Okay, Bill Crumplin.
Thank you. I'm following up a little on Beth Mair's question or observation that the government spent $4.5 billion to buy a pipeline when we still have so many First Nations communities under boil water advisory. I know it's difficult to balance needs in a country as vast as ours, but I do find it very difficult that we did that. The pipeline is not going to be good for the environment. It's going to encourage more use of fossil fuels, which we have to get off of. And I feel that it would have been a far better investment for us to have put that money into clean water in First Nations communities.
Would anyone else with Beth Mair's?
Yeah, I have a question directed towards Paul, I guess, or a comment. So it sounds like the Liberal government that you see yourselves as moving towards reconciliation. And yet, with regard to Indigenous issues, one of the court challenges, or or at least the court has ordered that people who were affected by the welfare system, the child welfare system on reserve, and were pulled out of the reserve, have been awarded a measly $40,000 per person for the damages that were done to their lives, how their lives were destroyed by abuse, being separated from their families. And your government has fought that tooth and nail, so that now you've launched an appeal. It's taken 7 years, and you're fighting this. I wonder why.
Thank you. So I have two questions here. Do I get 2 minutes to respond to each question? Beth's point is very important. I think surely when I saw that the government was appealing this decision, I was disappointed. The reality is this: it's not a question of if we're going to be resolving this; it's how. And I think that's the question that when you do a judicial review of a Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. I used to be actually a commissioner at the Human Rights Commission of Ontario. So what happens is there is a judicial review, and again, it's not, and the amount was actually only, as Beth said, only $40,000, because that's the maximum that the tribunal can offer. And in some cases, they need more. It is more than that, so we can't be limited to that. So for me, we need to be reviewing it, at the same time making sure that we are able to, discuss with the communities how it is best to move forward on that. So that's, again, disappointed with the appeal. At the same time, what I'm hearing is that we need to be working with the communities to address this as fast as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Would any other candidate wish to say more?
Thank you. I guess one of the points I'd like to make is part of the solution also is economic development, or a large part of it is economic development. And although I don't think we agree, having bought the pipeline, that should have remained in the private sphere. What we do feel is that developing resources is really part of the solution as well, because it'll fight poverty on the reserves. And so we have to have some of the research and some of the industry that goes in, and some of the exploration, and using, for example, developing mines, developing other resources out on the reserves, and making our fellow citizens on the reserves part of the solution as well to solve their problem of poverty. So it may be a bit of an open question for those that are questioning a lot of the development of resources. We need to have that development. It's in the interests of the First Nations.
Thank you, Mr. Saint-Amand.
Just as actually a testament to that, I've worked all over Canada in the mining industry, and I've worked with multiple bands in multiple provinces, and I've seen the benefits that come out of working mining companies, provinces, and the bands working together. I've seen incredible things come out of the bands. Great young people getting into the industry, learning a new trade, and seeing some wealth generated back into the community. And it's done very, very well. And as long as you can sit down and come up with the proper proposals and get everybody working on the same page and working together, things work very well.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. We'll now move on to question 2. According to Canada's Changing Climate Report, Canada is warming at over twice the rate of the global average. With the entire nation in mind, how do you think Canada can be positioned as a leader against the global crisis? And with respect to alternative energy sources and industry, how should Sudbury be implicated?
Le Canada se réchauffe 2 fois plus vite que la moyenne mondiale. Comment croyez-vous que le Canada peut se placer en tant que chef dans cette crise globale? Et comment est-ce que Sudbury peut s'impliquer avec les sources d'énergie renouvelables?
Pierre Saint-Amand will begin.
Merci beaucoup pour la question. We have a very well-developed and well-thought-up environmental plan. I'm saying right out front that we are planning on cutting the carbon tax. We feel that the carbon tax is actually has a very negative effect on our economy. But what we are focusing on is on innovation, research and development. And we believe that I think the problem is many people see the only solution is the complete elimination of carbon, and not the reduction of carbon emissions. And whereas we see that we can make oil part of the solution with research and development, and there's some very, very promising technologies out there. There's actually very promising technologies that already exist. And we only have to do is look out our window here to see some of the effect of that promising technology. And I'm talking about our super stack out here, which is no longer used. Or if it is used, it's sort of used very minimally, and it's going to be eliminated. and it has eliminated a vast proportion. I have a few figures in my mind, but I don't want to pull out a figure that may not be accurate. But we are showing some very promising advancements on technology, and it will not be as disruptive to our economy. And we are looking at putting a price on carbon, although we are not looking at a price that you as a consumer will be paying directly at the fuel pump. What we're doing is we will work with companies by legislation. We will work with companies by tax incentives to encourage them to reduce emissions. And I think this will have a very beneficial effect on our research and development community. And of course, here in Sudbury, we do not have a lot of alternative. We do not have the sophisticated public transit system as you'd find in Toronto. And even in Toronto, public transit will never be a total solution. So I think what I'd like to say is we want to make oil part of the solution, not part of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saint-Amand. Paul Lefebvre.
Thank you. As your question is multi-pronged, but I'll certainly, with respect to Sudbury's place in a low-carbon economy, Sudbury will benefit greatly from this. À chaque fois que je peux me lever et parler de Sudbury, soit à Ottawa, soit sur l'estrade internationale, je parle de l'histoire de Sudbury. Look at Sudbury where we were 50 years ago. We built a super stack, and that was innovation to get the pollution to go further. But because of regulation, because of innovation, the community coming together, look where we are now. All of our lakes, we can swim, drink the water. At the same time, we have planted 14 million trees, and the air has never been this clean for the past 100 years. Why? Because of all the regulations, as I said, of how we came together to make this happen. But as we are transitioning to a low-carbon economy, we need battery-powered vehicles. That's why we need nickel, we need copper, of which we have lots in the ground. Actually, we have grade 1 nickel right here. That's why we're seeing more exploration in the basin, 3 new mines opening in the next 4 years. So we will benefit greatly, and now it's making sure of how we make sure that the jobs that will be created by these green jobs created by this transition to a low-carbon economy, how are we going to make sure that we're filling those jobs, making sure that there's proper training, proper education for students that will come through to fill those jobs. I'm very, very optimistic as we transition to a low-carbon economy that Sudbury will benefit greatly, and all of the students here will have that potential to work in an industry. Donc, je suis très optimiste du futur, puis en même temps, Sudbury, comme j'ai dit, va en bénéficier grandement. C'est vraiment intéressant d'où ce qu'on était il y a 50 ans, où ce qu'on est aujourd'hui. C'est très intéressant où ce qu'on va être 50 ans à cette heure à cause de ce virage vert. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Lefebvre. Beth Mares.
My friends, you can be absolutely sure that the targets will not be met again if we are relying on sending mainstream politicians back to Parliament. This has been the promises have been broken so many times, and what's not being discussed here is that behind politics, there is big money, there's big interest, there's lobby groups. There are reasons why projects go ahead without bulldozing over First Nations sovereignty. There's a reason that there's been deregulation so that environmental assessments are not properly done, and that this is all connected. So we can't be naive regarding what the outcome is going to be unless we send people who are really, really serious about this. We can't even, how can we say when the salt level in Ramsey Lake is making the water undrinkable, how can we say that we can drink the water here? It has to be heavily treated. How can we say that the lakes are wonderful to swim in when by early in the summer there's so much blue-green algae that you can't, it's dangerous. So I just want to say to you, please think very carefully about when you vote who we're sending, because this is the make or break. The NDP, we are going to work relentlessly across party lines to meet the targets. And if I am your representative here, I will work very hard across party lines. I will not stick to a party line and put the opportunity to have a good aggressive plan on the table. In terms of Sudbury, some people may think that mining and moving towards a green economy are incompatible. Not so much the case, I think, as other people have said. We have many...
Thank you, Ms. Mears.
All right.
Bill CRUMPLIN.
Thank you very much. How to start? As Paul said, it's a multifaceted question. But I think I'll start by building on what Beth just said. Who you're going to send to Ottawa who's most concerned about the environment? That's me. There's no doubt. It's me. It's the Green Party. There was a bit of a zinger at the leaders' debate a week ago when Mr. Singh referred to Mr. Trudeau as Mr. Delay and referred to Mr. Scheer as Mr. Deny. Well, Mr. Singh forgot that he could be called Mr. Delay a little bit less. You know, the Liberals want to reduce emissions by 30% over 2005. The NDP want to do 38%. Yeah, it's better. We want and need to do 60% reduction from 2005 levels, and we have to do that by 2030. So Beth Mears is right. I'm the guy. I'm the guy to go to Ottawa. One of the things that Sudbury has in spades that we can utilize is actually the geothermal power or geothermal potential that exists under our feet. Our mines are hot. You don't live in this community very long before you run into a miner and they talk about how hot it is down there. We have the technology. We can turn that heat into electricity. As we're building the necessary metals that we need to further the green electric economy. We do need copper. We do need nickel. We do need lead. All that is so important for moving ahead. And the carbon tax is proven. Any economics worth his or her salt knows that the carbon tax is going to help us cut costs, or cut emissions rather. And one thing that doesn't...
Thank you, Bill CRUMPLIN.
Oh.
CHANELLE LALONDE.
Thank you. I believe that Canada, especially Sudbury, can be a leader and prove that people can reform their nation and economy to function successfully without dependence on fossil fuels as a source of energy or economic activity, and to get as close to zero GHG emission as technically possible. Taking action means saving our lives and civilization. Our plan includes implementing an aggressive carbon pricing mechanism that would encourage rapid adoption of conservation measures, removing all tax initiatives and subsidies from animal agriculture, assisting farms to transition from animal agriculture to a plant-based economy and biocyclic vegan agriculture, imposing tariffs on goods from nations that do not have carbon pricing measures as aggressive as Canada's, implementing large subsidies for adoption and development of alternative energy sources implemented through collaboration with local communities, and subsidies to oil and gas sectors, halt the expansion and constructions of new pipeline, and end any further development of the Alberta oil sands, wound down existing projects, and start land reclamation. Where the private sector is unable or unwilling to develop and implement alternative energy sources, the public sector would take on the task. In short, the APPC would straighten Environmental and Climate Change Canada and charge it with accelerating in-depth reviews of all outstanding environmental issues and developing programs to rapidly address them based on the best available science and best practice. I would also like to include a potential tree planting project in Sudbury. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Patterson.
The People's Party of Canada will withdraw from the Paris Accord and abandon unrealistic greenhouse gas emission targets. Stop sending billions of dollars to developing countries to help them reduce their emissions. We will abolish the Liberals' carbon tax and leave it up to the provinces to institute their own carbon taxes. We will abolish subsidies for green energy, but also for oil and gas, to help promote innovation within the industries, to make sustainable and force innovation within the industry. we're going to prioritize implementing practical solutions to make Canada's air, water, and soil clean. The primary goal when it comes to fossil fuels should be to clean particulates out of the emissions and harmful byproducts. We've done better over the years, but we can do much better. In doing this, we will be preserving industry jobs of a critical energy source we need to use as a primary energy source for now and a backup system in the future. Reduced energy output from the sun, major solar flares can affect an entire, a complete electrical grid system. I put together a plan 10 years ago to come up with community-based green energy system. It's called a power storage and regeneration facility, which turns our old mines into hydroelectric power storage facilities. And this is the type of innovation that we want to see move forward and Canada champion around the world.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. So now we'll move on to responses. Paula 5.
Thank you. My Conservative colleague talked about repealing the carbon tax, which we know is actually the only and actually one of the most important measures that we need to move forward on. And what we've noticed by Conservative politicians, certainly from Ontario, with these stickers at the pump, they don't tell the full story. They tell half the story. Tell the part that of what the cost is, but they don't talk about the rebate of what people are getting back on their tax returns. So my question to my colleague is, why are you misleading Canadians with how the carbon tax functions?
May I respond? Yes. Thank you very much. Merci Paul pour cette question puis l'opportunité de faire le point sur ça. Obviously, you know, on a sticker you can't give a lot of information, but what I'd like to say is one of the things that where there is misinformation is also on the refund of this. $117 million only in Ontario is not being returned to the consumer. And the other thing I'd like to say is when you look at the refund for the carbon tax, there's a lot of things that aren't really calculated in there. The price of your groceries that goes up because of the increased costs in transportation. One thing I would like to really make a point on and underline is that we are going to respect the Paris Accord. It is a commitment. It was a commitment on the previous Conservative government, and it's a commitment of our government. However, what I think you have to look at is the effect of the carbon tax. The effect of the carbon tax is great.
Thank you, Mr. Saint-Amand. Beth Maris?
So I've noticed at debates that Bill, my Green colleague, likes to take swipes at the NDP, and I never fight back, but I just want to ask all of you, if you could afford a zero emissions car, would you buy one? Yes? And if you could afford to put solar panels on your house, would you do so? Okay, so it feels a little bit to me at times when I listen to my colleague that he has said that he walks the talk because he has been able to implement these things. And my Liberal colleague here 2 days into the election dropped 40 or 50 or 60,000 to buy a zero emissions car. Now you compare that to the fact that in Sudbury, half the people are living on less than 50,000. So the NDP wants to make environmental choices accessible for everyone. That's the difference, not a boutique issue.
Thank you, Beth Maris. Bill Crumplin?
Well, I asked for the mic because I wanted to talk about Pierre's comment when he was talking about if we have to rely on oil, and if we don't, it's going to be disruptive. Well, it's only going to be disruptive to big oil. That's the issue there. In terms of what I've done to walk the talk, I am not a perfect person in terms of environmental use. As I've said to my students sometimes in jest, the best thing any one of us can do is, and Beth, I don't think either you or I want to do this, is to pick a tree out in the woods, go lay down underneath it and die. That's the only way we're going to have a zero impact. Yes, I've got the solar panels. Yes, I've got an EV on order. Yes, I've retrofitted my house. I am doing the things that I'm able to do because I think it's the right thing to do. And it would be immoral, I think, on my part.
Sean Patterson.
Yeah, People's Party of Canada wants to see innovation within the green energy industry. The biggest problem is the cost that goes along with it. Shutting down one of our primary resource industries that feeds and supports many other provinces around Canada is something that we seriously have to pay attention to. This industry cannot just be shut down and the jobs just converted over to something else. We need to look at building sustainable, innovative companies, such as wind generating companies, actually building the products ourselves. All these products that we're looking at bringing in are going to be coming from other countries. We need to actually bring this industry home to provide jobs for our own people and keep some wealth within our own country.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Would you like to go, Ms. Lalonde?
I would just like to say that I'm a young person in my 20s, and I find many, many ways in my daily life to live zero waste and find ways to be greener in my life. So you don't have to have a bunch of money to live a green life. I think that's a false statement. Yeah, I'd just like to say it that way. There's a lot of ways that you can live a green life and not spend a lot of money.
Thank you, Ms. Lalonde. We'll now move on to question 3.
La ville du Grand Sudbury a 3 institutions d'éducation postsecondaire majeures, le Collège Boréal, le Collège Cambrien et l'Université Laurentienne. Ces institutions ont une somme d'environ 33 000 étudiants. Pourtant, la plupart de ces étudiants quittent Sudbury pour trouver une carrière ailleurs. Quel est votre plan pour garder ces jeunes professionnels ici?
Greater Sudbury boasts 3 major educational institutes: Collège Boréal, Cambrian College, and of course Laurentian University. These institutions are cumulatively educating roughly 30,000 students, and yet it is fair to say a large portion will resolve to leave Sudbury behind for careers elsewhere. What do you plan to do to help Sudbury retain its young professionals? Beth Mayers.
Thank you. Well, as we make Sudbury greener, as we diversify the economy, we're hopefully going to be perfectly poised to keep you in town with jobs that are both well-paying and also are in line with your values. There's different ways of looking at Sudbury, and I think unfortunately sometimes through the NDP lens I find myself looking at all the people who are suffering and all the people who are, trying to make ends meet with precarious work or inadequate benefits. But it's also true that Sudbury is a best-kept secret. And maybe with more youth engagement and with more involvement outside of the campus in terms of coming into the city, that you will begin to feel more a part of the community. As well, if you were not saddled with so much debt, you would have more leisure time, you would have more disposable income, and with the NDP position, we want to move, we know student debt is massive, and in terms of collecting interest on that, we feel that that's really despicable, and so we would end that practice. Thank you. And we'd also be moving back to a grant system, which was what it was like when I was at university. So we want to extend ultimately that the public aspect of post-secondary, so that in the same way that kindergarten is free, so could be going to university. Thank you.
Pierre Saint-Amand.
Thank you very much for the question. I had the opportunity to go to a presentation at NORCAT, and it was very, very enlightening, and we were talking about forestry, and we were talking about mining, and how much money is actually being invested. And there's a huge amount, I think I heard from this community, there's just $400 million that was or is in the process of being invested over the years. And, you know, that's a pretty important sum. Jobs is the big question. You know, there are a shortage of people right now, so I think there is a lot of effort that's being done. I was meeting with the president of the university here and the president of the Collège Boreal, and they have a very, very well-developed system of cooperative students where the students, many students have the opportunity to work in the community. Our planning is to, first of all, leverage the investments to ensure that there's a very, very good level of development, research and development. We need more PhDs out here in Sudbury. We need more people who are really top-notch researchers. And also what we need is to enhance the program that the two university and college presidents were talking about. So part of it is really enhancing a lot of the things that are going on right now. It's very, there's some very promising things going on. And like Beth was saying, Sudbury is a really a well-kept secret. There's so much opportunity here, first of all, and there's so much, the standard of living here is great. I mean, we have lakes, we have fishing, we have all sorts of great opportunities here from a social point of view, from a sports point of view, and it certainly is something we want to do. So I guess the 2 points is we want to enhance that research and development with government funding, and we want to also encourage more cooperation or cooperative programs between students and the schools and industry.
Thank you. CHANELLE LALONDE.
Thank you. Firstly, I agree a little bit with the NDP that our party would also eliminate costs for kindergarten up to post-secondary education, so free tuition, which would also help students afford cost of living, which is a big issue that drives people out of the city because the cost of living is very unaffordable here. We would also like to create environmental jobs in Sudbury, tree planting projects, as well as maybe give out grants to people who want to start small businesses, since it is very hard with how much we make in jobs right now here in Sudbury, and the cost of living, like I said, it's hard to get ahead as a student, as a young person in the world right now. So eliminating the cost of post-secondary education and having affordable housing would help a lot keep young people in Sudbury. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Patterson.
So keeping jobs in Sudbury. Well, Canada we need to provide the environment for Canadians to invest within our own country. We need to build good corporations to produce our own products. And to do this with innovation, we need to be able to compete with other countries around the world, and we can only do this through innovation. Our cost of living here in Canada is extremely high. One of our big things with our party is to reduce taxes by not putting more money back in your pocket, but not taking it off your paycheck. We have a 0% taxes for the first 15,000. From 15,000 up to 100,000, it'd be at 15%, and from 100,000 up, you'd be at 25%. Reducing small business tax down to 10%. A key thing to growth in Canada is infrastructure. A lot of our infrastructure is getting old. We need to rebuild it. We need to finish some of it, and we need to expand it into remote areas that we haven't even gotten into yet. So, as for bringing jobs to Sudbury, the biggest thing is going to be innovation. Getting companies to want to invest within this community and actually build something that will make a difference for Canadians.
Thank you. Paul Lefebvre.
Thank you. So the question with respect to obviously job creation and making sure that the opportunities are there for the students that when they graduate to stay in Sudbury. But before I address that, just as we're on the theme of how we can help college students and university students, so just to highlight, certainly for our Liberal government, we want to increase grants for low and middle income students by 40%. We already started that in the past mandate, as well as give students 2 years or until they make $35,000 a year to start repaying their loans, and as well as help new parents by delaying student loan replacement until their youngest child turns 5. Because what we're hearing a lot is that when you graduate, saying, well, I don't want to start a family because I have so much debt. But if what we want to do is make sure that if you want to start a family, your debt will actually not start to accumulate until need to pay them back until your child reaches the age of 5. Now, on job creation, to me, the private sector and the public sector. Public sector in Sudbury, we're very, very fortunate that the federal government has public sector jobs here, Revenue Canada, as well as Service Canada, and some other institutions. Actually, in the past 4 years, we've actually brought back to Sudbury around 1,000 full-time jobs through the public sector. And that's at CRA, and as I said, at Service Canada. And actually, I'm looking in the crowd, I'm noticing some of you that I know that are actually working there part-time. So there's opportunities there. As well as in the private sector, in the next 5 years in Sudbury alone, there'll be $4 billion spent to create 3 new mines in the area. There's lots of opportunities there as well. So I'm very, very optimistic. Je suis très optimiste du futur pour les gradués d'ici, pour s'assurer qu'il y a de l'emploi dans la région. Puis il faut continuer d'avoir cette discussion parce qu'on sait que a lot of times what I'm hearing is that some employers have jobs and they can't find the people to fill those jobs. So what is that gap? What is missing? What training is missing? What education is missing? And that's what we need to address, and that's what certainly the conversations that we're having with employers as well as institutions such as Laurentian to make sure that we address that gap.
Thank you, Paul. Bill Crumplin.
Thank you. A couple of things that the Green Party has to offer. First of all, free tuition for post-secondary education. The other thing that we offer is forgiveness on current federally held student loans. Now that's going to make a huge difference when you leave university and you can begin to start a family or buy your first house. Now another thing that I feel that's really important is the fact that the Green Party wants to implement a guaranteed livable income. And that will take a lot of pressure off you. I can imagine graduating from university or College Boreal or Cambrian and wanting to start a business. Well, if you've got a guaranteed livable income in your back pocket, you have a much better chance of doing that. Just like you will be in a better position if you don't have that student debt. And believe me, I know what it's like. It took me 16 years to pay off my student debt. The other thing that I find interesting, and it's a bit of a story, a number of my colleagues like to tell stories. I was in a hockey dressing room about 1.5 years ago playing with some guys. I'd been called up, the half my age, and it was kind of cool. But after the game, they were talking about, talking to their friends who lived in Toronto. And their Toronto friends couldn't believe that the fact that they could find a house here in Sudbury for $400,000. It was a detached house. It had its own driveway. They are 10-15 minutes away from lakes and the environment. And their colleagues in Toronto were quite surprised and envious of that. So I see us as, we are sitting on a real gem here, and we need.
Thank you, Mr. Crumplin. So we'll now move to responses. Chanelle Lalonde.
I would just like to do a quick survey with the audience. If everyone who would like free tuition could lift up their hands. Okay, and I would just like the other candidates who did not say that in their platform to take note. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Patterson.
I'm just going to go. This is my personal experience when I went to both my colleges, actually. I went to school with actually people right from coming right out of high school. I went to my first college at 21, I believe, and Yeah, so my experience is that the people that actually did not have to pay for their education did not really actually concentrate on their education very much. And please let me explain just a little bit. When you're not investing within yourself, you lose a little bit of lack of focus on what you're there for. And this was just what I saw when I was at school. I went from both my colleges went from classes from in the 40 to 45 range to 12 to 13.
Ms. Maris?
The question was how to retain youth in the area and or students. So I'd like to hear, just put the time back to Chantal, who could give us a little bit more in insight. You talked about rent and you talked about low income wages. Could you draw a bit more, flesh that picture out for us?
Well, coming out of school, like I said, with debt, our party would eliminate debt coming out of school because we would offer free education. And it would be very nice for young people, so maybe make it an age gap where there's a set rent kind of number. That way people can afford it better. And also if we do offer free education Canada-wide, then students coming out of school are able to afford that and also start saving money from wherever jobs that they are working to be able to move forward in life and not be in debt until their 30s.
Thank you. Paul Lefebvre?
Donc, ma fille, actuellement, est en première année d'université, malheureusement pas à la Laurentienne. So my daughter was actually first year university. And so yes, for paying tuition, so I actually had to cut some checks about a month ago to pay for her tuition. And so that's why making it more affordable is certainly key. But the question was with respect to jobs and opportunities. So our government has actually in the past 4 years, through the Canada Summer Jobs opportunities, actually doubled the amount of Canada Summer Jobs. And each spring actually hold a summer jobs fair to make sure that we're matching the employers that want to hire students to give them that experience to basically possibly continue there full time after. So there's, again, different programs that we put through. I believe that we should enhance that program even more to give all the students that work experience that is so critical to be able to apply and say, I don't only have a degree, I have the experience that is necessary to fill that job, which to me is key. We're on that path. We need to make
Thank you, Mr. Lefebvre. Pierre Saint-Amand?
Thank you very much. And we're touching on a lot of areas, and probably the crux of the matter is overall cost of living, and what we're going to do for the big money issue. We're talking about debt. We're talking about student debt, but we can't talk about student debt without talking about national debt. And there's a cost for everything, and everything is linked in here. Eventually, you as students are going to have to pay, because you are much younger than I am, and you're going to have to suffer through probably some pretty important cuts when this debt of ours comes to an end. So basically what we're going to be looking at here in a few years, if the economy does take a downturn, if our ratio of interest is increased, well, basically what you're going to have to do is refund this. So there's a cost to everything.
Thank you, Mr. Saint-Amand. Bill CRUMPLIN?
Thank you. One of the things that our party has in the platform is we're acknowledging the fact that the Trans Mountain Pipeline has cost us a lot of money up till this point in time. It's going to cost us $10 to $13 billion moving forward with the current status quo, this current idea. The Green Party sees that pool of money, we could invest that in job creation throughout the country. And as your rep in Ottawa, I would do my best to make sure we got at least our fair share of that money to create jobs here locally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CRUMPLIN. We'll now move on to question 4. The federal government is the single largest employer in all of Canada. In Sudbury, the mining industry represents the largest source of employment. How do you plan to promote the development of smaller, innovative businesses to diversify Sudbury's economy and create new jobs?
Lors de cette période de chômage élevé, quelles actions devraient être prises pour améliorer l'économie de notre pays? Qu'est-ce que le gouvernement fédéral devrait faire à propos de la disparité économique croissante entre les classes sociales?
Pierre Saint-Thomas.
Thank you for that question. And I think it'll surprise a lot of people here in the audience for one statistics that's very interesting. Sudbury, there's kind of two Sudburys, and if you look at the average revenue per median income here in Sudbury, it's actually much lower than the average revenue for Ontario and for Canada. So it's kind of striking that we're several $1,000s below the national average and the Ontario average. So mining and forestry are part of the solution. We do have a reliance on mining, but we also don't profit as much as we can from development of mining. And the Conservative Party is very much the party of small business and entrepreneurs. We are very, very pro-small business, very, very pro-entrepreneurship. And what we want to do, of course, is diversify that. We can diversify it on several levels. I think there's a lot of government jobs that have moved to Sudbury over the last few years, which has helped to diversify our hospital as well. But in fact, mining is still going to be the essential element here in Sudbury. And part of that is we were talking about research and development. What we want to do is we want to bring more PhDs here to conduct research right here in Sudbury. So I think that's really part of the solution, is to enhance what we do and try to have an added benefit from mining, not just sort of taking the minerals out of the soil, but also transforming it here, doing research and development on methods of mining here, and developing an entire industry here that will be focused on transformation. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Lefebvre.
Thank you. When it comes to certainly to supporting jobs and the transition to a low carbon economy, as I said before, I really believe that Sudbury is going to be a major benefactor. And there's going to be a lot of jobs created by that sector. But it also boils down to innovation. Je disais au début également d'où est-ce qu'on était il y a 50 ans à cause de l'innovation, où est-ce qu'on est rendu, puis à cause de l'innovation également, où est-ce qu'on va être dans 50 ans. C'est pour ça que je suis très optimiste pour la région de Sudbury. So we need to be supporting, certainly transforming more of the minerals and making sure that the whole supply chain, that it doesn't pass us by, that we're just not, an extractive area, and then after that, all those minerals leave. How can we make sure that we can transform it here? And there's actually some projects that are already ongoing. Certainly, when it comes to building batteries, that certainly Sudbury has greatly benefited from that, being a nickel powerhouse and a copper powerhouse. And so we need to continue down that road. We've worked with the SAMHSAs of the mining supply sector here, or how we can enhance that. And every time I have a chance to talk about Sudbury around the world, I talk about our great mining supply sector, that we just don't create stuff here, we invent stuff here. We are a city of inventors. Amazing people are doing amazing things. And we need to highlight that and allow them to make sure that we can build it here, then export it around the world from Sudbury. With the programs that are coming through, we're focused on making sure that there are great export programs for businesses. And at the end of the day, this means jobs for all of us right here in Sudbury. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Lefebvre. Bill Crumplin.
Thank you. A couple of things. I wish I had the exact numbers, but I'm going to use the old 80-20 rule, 80%, 20%, which is going to be close. About 20% of our mining income, our mining development right now, actually is taken or is the result of miners, people underground. About 80% is elsewhere. It's the mining supply sector. It's the innovation that you've heard other people talk about. I too have been to NORCAT. I too have seen what's going on there. A couple of the people there happen to be friends of mine. And I know that very recently we had a contingent up from Peru learning how to use simulators in order to do mining. We actually have the technology to mine around the world right here from Sudbury. We don't actually have to move. The Green Party actually has in its platform $40 million set aside to help innovation in the mining supply sector. I was with Elizabeth May the day she was here in August. I saw her pick up the phone when she was talking to people at SEMI, and she asked somebody in Ottawa, on her team, to put that in the platform. Sudbury is in the Green Party platform to support the mining supply sector. Another thing that we have at our disposal is cross-laminated timber. We have the School of Architecture that is focused on that. I feel that that is something that we can really develop here. We are next door to the resource. We should be and could be expanding our work in that respect. We can use the trees that are nearby and become a world leader in this particular building product, which also sequesters carbon. I've got a dry mouth. I can never say that word. But
Thank you, Mr. Crumplin. Sean Patterson.
I'm just going to give you an example of what we can do here in Sudbury. Like, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I patented a power storage and regeneration facility. Something like this can store and regulate power. The problem with our grid when it comes to green energies is that we cannot regulate the power. We can't, wind only blows when it blows. You can only generate power when the sun's out with solar. So you need to be able to store and regulate that power. And a community grid system, some of I believe our conservative colleagues want to build a national grid going across Canada. We know that line loss will never actually make this happen properly. So community grid systems that can be interconnected or disconnected during bad times, snowstorms, ice storms, that kinds of stuff. This is something that we can bring to the Sudbury area. Potential for this project is a game changer for the green energy industry. It's the missing link. Power storage is the missing link. And something on this scale, using an old mine, will give us industrial scale power. So we actually can run a mine, we can run a mill, we can power an entire city because it's based off of hydroelectric power. As your water cascades down through your old mine, you're producing power multiple times. And the act of actually storing power is moving that water back to surface in a closed circuit system. In my method, we're using water evaporation, so you have an actual byproduct of fresh water. These innovations like these are what can make Sudbury a world leader in innovation, technology, the mining industry, a major source of work and life in Sudbury, and one of the biggest pushes to get the mining and exploration boom going again here in Sudbury.
Thank you. CHANELLE LALONDE.
Thank you. Firstly, I would like to say we would transition from mining to green jobs and or green mining practices. In the 2017 World Economic Forum identified two important dangers facing the globe: economic inequality and societal polarization. The political challenge is transitioning from the current system to one that is inclusive and sustainable without creating extreme short-term disruptions to people's livelihoods and well-being that would cause more harm than good. Where disruptions do occur, government programs should be implemented to support people as they go through them. The APPC believes in a steady-state economy, which includes the following: increasing taxes on the wealthiest, phasing in basic income programs, expanding protection for workers in the private sector, providing low-cost government financing for smaller businesses and cooperatives, establishing a sovereign fund that invests in shares of major Canadian corporation, establishing a government-owned retail banking corporation, enhancing the Canadian pension plan funded with royalties from non-renewable resource development, creating a consumption tax regime that takes into account a good effects on sustainability, phasing out subsidies on activities that impede sustainability, such as those who support oil and gas development. The developing a world-leading, globally competitive Canada quality standard of excellence that would encourage Canadian industries to develop consumer products that put quality, finest material, long life repairability, best practices, labor standards, and environmental sustainability at a low cost. Transitioning to the steady state economy would be a long-term process, much like the transitioning to fossil fuels to renewable energy. Thank you.
Beth Mares.
Several of my colleagues have been very convincing regarding Sudbury benefiting from a transition to a low-carbon economy, and I don't disagree with that at all. But I see eyes rolling back in your heads. I don't know, because I want to go back to the previous question. What is going to keep you here? Now, maybe it's making batteries, but if that's not your jam, what I'd like to talk about is diversifying the economy in Sudbury. We will be benefiting from the green economy, and that means that other sectors will benefit as well. And one of the NDP platforms is to take this economic development agency. It's called FedNor, and part of their purpose is to invest in a range of fields. So tourism, think of the potential for ecotourism in the Northeast. Think about small business opportunities. Think about arts and culture. Think about healthcare. So all of these other sectors of the economy are places where you can create a niche business. You can support Sudbury being a more livable place, and you can have balanced work-life opportunities if we make those investments, which is very important for us to do. So as well with the NDP, because of our commitment to more universal programs, so free tuition, pharmacare, childcare, those sorts of things, it means you have more disposable income for a better quality of life. And that means that you may be able to pursue your dream here. Maybe that's making batteries, but the sky's the limit.
Thank you. We'll now move on to responses. Paul?
Thank you. Just because we're at Laurentian and we're talking about the mining industry, but at the same time research. So the School of Engineering, the building just on the other side here, we were the ones that certainly we wanted to help out universities and post-secondary institutions to make sure that they had the opportunities and certainly the infrastructure needed to have a better place to study and to do research. So that's why we funded a lot of universities across Canada to make sure that we had first-class institutions and places to study, as well as we actually made the largest investments in the history of Canada in science. So more than $10 billion to support Canadian scientists and researchers across Canada. So that's something that we need to continue to do, and certainly support science-based decision making. So if I want to ask a question to one of my other colleagues, certainly, I know the Conservatives are often against science-based decision making, so I'm hoping that if they form the government, that they will not continue down that path.
Thank you. Would any of the other candidates care to respond? Bill Crumplin?
There are a number of opportunities here in Sudbury. Ecotourism is one. I do caution a little bit about ecotourism because tourism is a pretty flighty sector of the economy. It comes and it goes, and the other thing with ecotourism, people have to get here, and that means adding to their particular carbon footprint. But there are all sorts of things that are happening in our community. It's a little thing, but I think it's huge, and it gets to what CHANELLE was talking about a little earlier, I think, and that's that we now have a business called the Nickel Refillery, and where we can go and buy products with zero waste. And this is a small business that's been started up by a few local women, and I think that's a great example of how we can use the green economy, use that.
Thank you, Mr. Crump. Would any of the other candidates care to respond? No. Can we move on? All right, perfect. All right, moving on to question 5.
Chaque année, le Canada approuve plus de 300 000 nouveaux arrivants. Certaines personnes croient que ce nombre est trop élevé et voudraient le réduire, tandis que d'autres voudraient l'augmenter ou le garder stable. Si vous êtes élu, quel changement voulez-vous apporter aux politiques d'immigration au Canada? Ou dans le cas contraire, pourquoi croyez-vous qu'il ne devrait pas changer?
More than 300,000 people are approved to make Canada their permanent home each year. Some individuals believe that this is too many and would strive to reduce the number, while others believe in an increase. Candidates, considering I'm sorry, I messed up the question a little bit. Some individuals believe that this is too many and would strive to reduce the number, while others believe in an increase or keep the number stable. If elected, what changes would you strive to make to Canada's immigration policies, or why do you believe that Canada's immigration policies do not need to change? CHANELLE LALONDE.
Thank you. Our party does not have a formal position on this issue. However, I personally believe that welcoming new people from around the world will not only grow our communities, but help boost our economy. Canada is one of the most diverse countries in the world, and we are richer and stronger for it. As the world experiences an unprecedented refugee crisis, Canada also has a vital role to play in wrestling people forced out of their homes by conflict, persecution, and disaster. We need to work with Canadians to resettle refugees in our communities, ensuring that they are given the support they need to build successful lives and new homes here in Canada. Thank you.
Beth Mares.
Yeah, when it comes to humans being who could face torture, persecution, or death if they're returned to their home countries, then we have a moral and legal obligation to assess every case based on individual circumstances. And in addition to that, we have a labor shortage. So we need immigration. But as Chantal had mentioned, we have an unprecedented human displacement problem around the world, and there's absolutely no way that we cannot be, with our land mass and with our resources, that we cannot respond to that. We can't close our borders. And one of the things that or a couple of things that the NDP would do, currently there's something called the Safe Third Country Agreement, and this is when someone moves to the U.S., but then they want to get to Canada and they're denied. This was instituted during the Harper government. So that's something that we want to suspend, because we recognize that people may want to, especially traveling from south to north in the Americas, may find a more receptive community in Canada, but they have to pass through the U.S. So while that policy is in place, it effectively blocks people. The other thing that the NDP is very, very concerned about with regard to immigration is to look at the plight of temporary workers. So we have people working in the farm industry, we have people working domestically, and the NDP is always a champion of workers' rights, and this is an area where people are being badly exploited, and so this is an area that we want to focus some attention on. Thank you.
Pierre Saint-Amand.
Thank you. Anne and I have have 5 children. 4 of them are living with refugees. 4 of them, they came over with their parents when they were quite young, and they're refugees, and they're very, very well integrated into the country. I think we have 2 systems. We have an immigration system that works actually quite well. It does need some tweaking. But we also have a refugee system which doesn't necessarily address the problem of refugees. My brother worked in cooperation, and he's been bringing refugees over from third world countries who are conflict countries. The problem we have now, and he's outraged with the people who are abusing the system and coming across the border. The Safe Third Country Agreement is actually a good agreement, and we should respect it. And we should make room for legitimate refugees. As I said, it's outrageous. We have legitimate refugees that we can bring over who are suffering. They've been in camps for years, and these people and I'm not saying it in a negative point because they're part of my family. These people need our help, but we do not need to open the doors completely to anyone who wants to come over just because they've been shopping for the best country to gain access to the first world. Thank you.
Paul Lefebvre.
Merci. One of the first things that we did when we took power in 2015 was to welcome over 40,000 Syrian refugees in Canada. Sudbury was an amazing community that received these refugees, and we can see them thrive in our community. I see it with my own eyes how they are thriving in our community on a daily basis. We do have a skilled labor shortage in Northern Ontario and certainly in Sudbury, and that's why we have endeavored to start an immigration pilot project to be able to match businesses that are looking for skilled trades around the world, and to make sure that we're able to have these people come here and fill those jobs that we cannot find workers in the area or even throughout Canada for that matter. J'aimerais par exemple prendre cette occasion pour parler de l'immigration francophone. Si que le Canada est pour demeurer un pays bilingue, puis pour avoir une province francophone et le restant du Canada être anglophone, si on est sérieux qu'on va avoir un vrai pays bilingue, il faut qu'on rencontre nos cibles d'immigration francophone. Notre cible est de 5%, parce que si on veut maintenir un Canada bilingue, c'est environ 5% à l'extérieur du Québec. On a mis des programmes en place, Entrée Express, francophone, le programme de Francophone Plus également. Donc, on a mis des projets en place pour s'assurer qu'on pouvait attirer et avoir des immigrants francophones venir au Canada, puis assurer que nos écoles francophones, nos universités francophones peuvent accueillir ces élèves et ces gens et ces familles. On met les mesures en place. Sudbury has actually been a recipient of a lot of francophone families from around the world to come here because of the measures that our government put in place to be able to make it easier for them to come in. Because if we are going to be maintaining a bilingual country, francophone immigration plays a very, very important role. Merci.
Sean Patterson.
The People's Party of Canada, we're the only party that actually wants to reduce immigration. Right now we're at 350,000. And we're going to pull ourselves out of the UN Migration Pact. Right now migration is at 350,000. We want to reduce that to 100 to 150,000. Reform the immigration point system and related programs to allow a larger portion of economic migrants. Right now, only 26% of the people that are immigrating to Canada are actually employable as they show up to Canada. We would like to get that up to 50%. So that's when we're talking about filling jobs. People that we're looking at, seriously looking at what these people can do, coming to Canada and getting themselves to work right away with jobs that are available. We're looking at accepting fewer resettled refugees, so your third country policy, and keeping that intact. Limiting migrants accepted under the family reunification program, including and abolishing programs for parents and grandparents. Limit the number of temporary foreign workers and make sure they fulfill the temporary positions and do not compete unfairly with Canadian workers. Challenge the law to make birth tourism illegal. Ensure every candidate
20 seconds.
Increase resources for CSIS, RCMP, and Canadian immigration and citizenship to do interviews through background checks and all classes for all classes of immigrants.
Bill Crumplin.
A bit of a different view from me. Canada actually needs immigrants. We need immigrants for a number of reasons. Not the least of which is, if we look at our birth rate, if we look at just landed Canadians, our birth rate is, 0, slightly a little higher than that. We actually need population to grow, and that's going to come from having immigrants and their children. And it's something I have lectures on this that are an hour and 20 minutes long, so it's very frustrating. So we actually need them. Like the NDP, we will eliminate the safe third country. We will allocate much more funding and training for both official languages for immigrants. We want to ensure that professionals who are coming over have the credentials that they say they have, and actually have them become employed and help us out. It's another thing that's really critical in all this is the idea of an environmental refugee. As climate impacts become worse and worse, we're going to find more people being pushed from their homes to other places. And I think we need to plan for that. We need to be proactive and accept the fact that this is actually going to happen. And we need to work with the United Nations and other countries to come up with a clear definition about what an environmental refugee is. We have a responsibility to accept people into our country, and we actually have a need for them. We do, again, you've heard from many of my colleagues, we have a labor shortage here in Canada, and this is one way that we can satisfy it. Thank you.
Would any of the candidates wish to respond or comment? Pierre Saint-Amand.
Thank you. Yes, I agree totally that we do need immigrants. We do have a job shortage, and if you look around here at the panel, there's a few gray hairs. So we need to ensure that we have some replacement. Some have fewer gray hairs than others. J'aimerais également parler, Paul, je suis entièrement d'accord avec votre commentaire pour l'immigration francophone, et on devrait même le rehausser. Une de mes grandes fiertés, évidemment, c'est notre pays, le bilinguisme de notre pays. Et j'encourage toujours l'anglais au Québec, puis j'encourage toujours le français ici dans le restant du Canada. Fait que je suis complètement d'accord avec vous. Et peut-être une petite histoire rapide, c'est que si je vois le nombre d'enfants dans mon église, je pense qu'il y en a il y a peut-être 7-6 enfants qui montent en avant lors des cérémonies, lors de la messe, en faisant partie de la cérémonie. Puis il y en a deux qui sont...
Thank you, Pierre. Sean Patterson.
Okay, I'd just like to say that the People's Party of Canada, we are not anti-immigration. We just want to have a more controlled flow, get back to the immigration system that we originally had, that was envied around the world, that other countries looked to us to set up their immigration systems, and we've fallen away from that. And right now, some of our social safety net is maxed out, is pushed to its limit. We've got a housing crisis, and we also have to worry about the economics of it. So, like I said earlier, when I look at a policy, I look at it as the health and security of the nation, and this is key, and it's something we always have to pay attention to.
Beth Maris.
A pattern that we see around the world in Western democracies and capitalist societies is with liberal, what's called neoliberal capitalism, we see more and more white working class people feel disenfranchised. They feel left out of the economy, they are really suffering, and this breeds resentment towards others, including immigrants. I'm wondering if any of our panelists would like to discuss the link between shrinking the immigration numbers with this fear.
Paul Lefebvre.
So, two things I want to say. Certainly, my office, as an MP, certainly one of the things that we offer is actually immigration services. And we are my door is always people coming in to help out immigrants for either their paperwork or to get families to come in. And we've done a lot of work on that, and certainly a lot even work with groups in Sudbury that are trying to bring immigrant families to Sudbury. So we are at the forefront of that, advocating for this. And I have to say, as we were talking about immigration, I just saw a young man go behind us that actually we helped to his family to come here from Syria. So ça faisait très trop chaud au cœur de voir lui dire bonjour. Just seeing the fruits of of those efforts, and when we work towards that. And now that they've left Syria in a time of crisis, and here we are in Sudbury, being able to study at a fantastic institution. To me, that is what our story is in Sudbury. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Paul. Bill Crumplin.
Ms. Mayor's question is a dangerous one. And I want to, address it, but maybe to do so in a way that is more positive. The Green Party wants to work with municipalities and provinces to improve the integration of new Canadians into the multicultural fabric of our country. We also want to support multicultural communities by assisting cultural organizations to obtain charitable status. That might not seem like much to you, but that's actually huge. That would allow people to get money back on their taxes, a tax refund, by actually helping people integrate into our society. And again, as I started out, I don't like using words like us and them. We're in this together. We're on one planet. We've got to work through this together.
Would you like to respond?
It's working. Okay. I do agree a lot with Bill Crumplin on this issue, and I find it shameful that the PPC would want to stop refugees from coming in. It's terrible and shameful to even think that. There are people who are starving in the world, who are stuck in war. Women don't feel safe going out on their own in certain countries. We have a beautiful country here where we can allow immigrants to come in, refugees to come in. We have a lot of space, and they are also currently in an environmental crisis because of the damage that we have caused to our planet. They are suffering from droughts, from floods, from hurricanes and such, and that is our doing, and we need to fix it. Thank you.
We'll now move on to closing statements. We'll start with CHANELLE LALONDE.
I want to thank the organizers of this event for having me here today. I also want to thank all the students of Laurentian University, as well as members of the public who took time of their busy schedules to be part of this very important debate. To my fellow candidates, I wish you well in the upcoming election. This election is a very important one for our generation. The most pressing issue today is climate breakdown. It is slow-moving, life and death catastrophe that is already harming us and every living being. We, and especially our politicians, must confront it with all urgency necessary to overcome it. We caused it, we need to fix it. Nothing less will do than adopting a climate breakdown emergency plan. If politicians are unable or unwilling to appreciate the immediate threat and real and direct dangers that the climate emergency poses to all Canadians, then we must make sure they are not elected. More millennials are eligible to vote in Canada than baby boomers. If we truly want change, we need to get out there and vote on Election Day, Monday, October 21st. If you'd like to learn more about the Animal Protection Party of Canada, please come see me after the debate or visit animalprotectionpartyofcanada.ca. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
Bill Crumplin.
CHANELLE is right. This is a critical election. And to emphasize this, and I don't think I've mentioned this, where we've had several debates, we've got a couple more coming up. But I've had some of my students, particularly female students, and some of my female friends who happen to be in their late 20s to their early 30s come up and ask me, Dr. Crumplin, should I have children? And they ask that question because they're worried about the future their children are going to inherit. This election is critical to make sure that we have an environment for those children so that women today, you know, their husbands as well, that they know there's going to be something for their children. Some of the things that the Green Party wants us to do, we feel we have to do. And maybe it's a little like taking Buckley's cough syrup. You know, it doesn't taste good, but it's good for you. We can't just have jelly beans in terms of climate action. We have to do the real things. And again, vote. I wish it was easy. I wish we could reach out and touch millennials, because you guys are elusive. You're slippery as eels. It's hard to get to you. Please vote. And, you know, as one of my colleagues said earlier, we have to send somebody to Ottawa who's going to be a champion for the environment. That's the Green Party generally. That's me in Sudbury. You've got to vote Green. It's the only chance we've got, so you guys can have children and they will inherit a world that's worth living in. Thank you.
Sean Patterson.
The PPC has an excellent tax platform, immigration reform. We are not against immigration. Environmental policy, addressing factors that affect our environment, not taxing our citizens into poverty. We also have an excellent gun control policy for legal gun owners and not turning them into criminals. We have a Canada First policy, so we will concentrate on Canadians first, such as our Indigenous populations, our veterans, building key infrastructure, helping companies innovate and provide the environment for businesses to succeed. We want to reduce the cost of living and eliminating the dairy cartel, reducing taxes instead of promising tax rebates, which gives the purchasing power back to the people. And in final, I'm going to read a little ditty that I wrote up. It's called I Will Not. I will not allow my country to be destroyed. I will not allow my fellow man to starve. I will not allow $1 a carbon tax to leave this country. I will not allow one industry to be shut down. I will not allow the sick and elderly to be left behind. I will not allow children to be abused. I will not allow our Indigenous people to be chained any longer. I will not allow our veterans to stand alone. I will not allow our environment to be destroyed. I will not allow division that has been sown into our society to divide us. What will you not allow?
Paul Lefebvre.
Premièrement, merci beaucoup aux organisateurs de cet important événement. Merci de le faire dans les deux langues officielles également. So, you have a choice on October 21st. Some of you may have already voted. And certainly, the choice is to continue with the investments that we have been making in Canadians over the last 4 years, or possibly, probably, cuts to services that we all cherish and we all need. And for me, being here, starting to talk about education, making education more affordable, more accessible, is key for that. I'm very optimistic about your future, my kids' future. I have 3 kids. I told you about my daughter. Ma fille va à l'université. J'ai 2 garçons également à l'école secondaire. But I'm optimistic for their future. Yes, the environment is extremely important. That's why we have an ambitious plan and practical measures to achieve our targets. At the same time, we need to make sure that we have opportunities and make sure that we talk about it in a positive way. And that's Sudbury, where we were 50 years ago and where we are now. If we would have this, the tenor of how we addressed this issue 50 years ago, we would have shut down Sudbury because mining was dirty. We need to look at the opportunities that lie for all of us here in Sudbury, in Canada as well. The world looks upon Canada. The world needs more Canada. And I really want to be your voice to continue delivering that for Sudbury. Merci beaucoup.
Beth Mairs.
So my goal today was more to make sure that you understood the New Democrat platform. We believe in what's called a mixed economy, which is a blend of the free market, capitalism, and a social welfare state. Social democracies around the world have strong strong social safety nets so that for citizens, you're not paying out of pocket for everything. So free healthcare, free dental plans, free prescription drugs, free university and college tuition, lots of housing geared to people's incomes. These are all hallmarks of the social democratic way. So our view is more communal than individualistic, so that folks are still have variations in what they earn based on a number of factors, but the bottom line is no one is going to fall into abject poverty. Community services and assets are well funded because the priority is given to people's value of life. And you may pay more taxes in a social democracy, but you get far more back in services that benefit everyone. Our leader, Jagmeet Singh, is 40 years old, and at university he was an outspoken activist, and he fought against raising tuition fees, and then he studied law so that he could support community organizations fighting poverty, keeping tuition affordable, and advocating for equal access to justice for marginalized groups. He jumped into politics in 2011, and he continued to fight for people because he felt that people need an ally in government. And Jagmeet's mantra is that he believes that the key to success is empowering young people. I'd like to just leave with something that he said. The defining feature of the NDP, of every new Democrat, is that we are not only offended by inequality...
Thank you, Beth. Sorry to cut you off there. Pierre Saint-Amand.
I would also like to thank the organizers for this. It's always an excellent opportunity to talk sort of unfiltered and to discuss your concerns. I'd just like to re-emphasize that we are not climate change deniers. We are committed to meeting the Paris Accord. Point final. And the other thing I'd like to say is there's a lot of things that are linked. You were talking about student debts. That's a very important issue, and we are committed to increasing some of the subsidies. However, student debt is also linked to every other debt, household debt. It's linked to national debt as well, and we sort of have rosy sunglasses when we talk about our national debt right now, but if we add up the provincial debts, our debt to GDP ratio is not all that great. So you have to consider that as well. The other thing I'd like you to consider is to be part of that 10%. We talk about taxing the rich. To be part of that 10%, all you have to do is make $80,400, and this according to Statistics Canada. If you make more than that amount, you are part of the 10%, the richest in the Canadians. So there's not that many Bill Gates out there, so we have to consider that. And that 10% is paying over 50% of their income in taxes. So that's an important factor. I'm looking around at university students here. You probably hope to make at least $80,400. So anyway, une autre fois, j'aimerais remercier les étudiants pour nous avoir invités parce qu'on a vraiment eu, je pense, des bonnes discussions. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Merci. Voilà qui conclut le débat électoral fédéral de 2019 de l'Université Laurentienne. Cet événement a été rendu possible grâce à l'Association de sciences politiques, l'AEF et l'AGE. Le but de ce débat était d'impliquer et d'engager la jeunesse ici à la Laurentienne. Les élections se déroulent le 21 octobre et nos voix doivent être entendues. Nous aimerions remercier les candidats et tous ceux qui sont venus assister au débat. Et nous invitons les candidats à rester pour discuter avec les étudiants après. Aussi, n'oubliez pas de nous demander à propos du Parlement simulé.
That concludes the Laurentian 2019 federal election debate. This event to you was brought to you by LUPSA, SGA, and the AEF. The whole point of this debate here at Laurentian is really to get youth involved and engaged. The election is on the 21st, and our voices need to be heard. I'd like to thank you all for being here. I'd like to thank the candidates for coming, and I'd invite the candidates to stick around and maybe talk to some of the students in attendance today who want to actually meet you. Also, please, please, please ask me about Model Parliament.